Michelle Zauner is leader of the Philly indie rock band Japanese Breakfast and the author of the best-selling memoir Crying in H Mart. The book's title was inspired by the branch of the Korean-American supermarket chain in Elkins Park that Zauner frequently visited while living in Philadelphia after her mother's death. Her first two Japanese Breakfast albums were full of songs of grief, and in June, the band releases its third album, Jubilee. Today on Inquirer Live, Michelle Zauner of Japanese Breakfast will talk to Inquirer music critic Dan DeLuca about her memoir, her new album, and her upcoming tour, which will bring her to Union Transfer for 5 shows in August.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Dan DeLuca. I am a music critic at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and today I have a very special guest, and that is Michelle Zauner, who is both the author of Crying in H Mart, this New York Times best-selling memoir. It came out in May, and also the leader of Japanese Breakfast, her band, indie rock band, whose new record Jubilee is out, and which will bring her for a total of 5, count them, 5 shows at Union Transfer in Philadelphia in August. So she's super interesting and super talented, and I'm looking forward to talking to her. She will be with us in 1 second. First, I have a few housekeeping things to tell you about, which is so you know how to participate in today's event. At any time during the discussion, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions for Michelle. So to do so, please ask your questions in the comment section at the bottom of the page. If you're watching on social media, please visit inquirer.com/Philly Playlist Live to submit your questions. So that's the drill. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Michelle Zauner to Inquirer Live.
Hey. Yay! Hi, Dan. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for being here. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm doing great. We've actually been in Philadelphia for the past 4 days rehearsing for the tour that starts tomorrow, and we've been rehearsing at Union Transfer, and so hopefully when we get to those 5 shows, we'll feel nice and comfortable there.
Ooh, that's exciting. That's cool. I saw you posted a picture of your big yellow bus.
Yes, I did request a yellow bus, and we got it, and we met our bus driver today, and it's just like one of those things that honestly, at the peak of my ambition and fantasy, never thought I would see the day that I would be on a tour bus. So it was a big moment for me. It was very exciting. And also it's just been so long since we've been on tour. So it's so great to feel like we're getting back in the saddle again.
Right. So have the previous tours been in vans rather than buses? Or no?
Yeah. I mean, the first 3 full-length tours, national tours that we did that were like 6 weeks in length, were actually in a minivan. We did 3 6-week tours in a Honda Odyssey. Right. And then we upgraded to like a 15-passenger van, and then a 15-passenger van with a trailer. And this is the first time we've done a bus.
Wow. You really are Jimmy Fallon big.
We are truly Jimmy Fallon big now.
I'll get to that. We can explain that. Okay. Well, this is interesting. That you're at Union Transfer, because a couple weeks ago you were on Jimmy Kimmel, right? And you did that from the Sellersville Theater, right?
We did, yeah. We wanted to. I knew that the song has this. We played Paprika, and the song has this kind of theatrical type of quality, and I wanted it to feel. I rewatched The Sound of Music recently, and I just wanted to have this kind of like almost like ballet or opera musical kind of quality to it. And so we were looking for theaters, and the band is kind of split between New York and Philadelphia at this point. So it was kind of like a good place to go. And the staff there and the venue was just so stellar and perfect for what we wanted to do. And it was really great putting that together.
Right. And so is the band as it appeared in that presentation, is that the band?
It's a little bit smaller. So I think that for that we maybe had 8, maybe we had 9 people on stage for that, and we have 6 people in the band. But we do have a lighting designer, so that's a new thing for us. And yeah, the show is definitely a bigger show.
Right. And there will be a gong? Is that
there will be a gong? Yes, we have incorporated the gong. That was very important to me.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I remember like seeing like Elton John and he always had a gong player, you know?
Yeah.
Like the drummer had a giant gong.
Yeah. I was really inspired by there's a Flaming Lips performance. I forget what late night show they were on, but they performed Race for the Prize with a gong and a theremin, and I loved that and wanted to have one.
Right. That is cool. That's cool. All right. I wanted to ask you before we backtrack and get to like the beginning of your story and tell your story. I want to talk a little bit about this period, sort of since the book and then the record have come out, and like just these past few months as you've sort of come out of like the hibernation that we've all been in with the pandemic, and your stuff has been received in the world, both in like what that reception has been like, because it's been in a lot of ways, it seems like a rapturous reception. It seems like it's been a great reception, but also you've done like lots and lots of cool stuff, you know, before as this prelude to going out on the road. A lot of which seems like, I mean, there's like TV shows, but also where you've done some virtual interview things with some people who I assume are your heroes, really, right? So talk about that a little bit. What's that been like?
It's been surreal. Yeah, this was definitely the year of virtually meeting many of my heroes. I got to talk to Phil Elverum from Mount Erie, Karen O from the Yes, right. Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for a Cutie, which is a huge songwriting hero of mine, to virtual book event with me. Who else? I talked to Liz Phair recently, which was wild. Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful time. I mean, it's surreal because like, you know, it's amazing that we have the opportunity to play Kimmel and Fallon, but it's not associated with a real feeling of presently being in that studio and this sort of fight or flight kind of sensory moment. But in some ways it was really nice because I felt like we could have a lot more control over what we were presenting and be a little more creative with it. And it also helped us prepare for this tour in a real way because we were sort of learning songs in pockets for sessions and stuff like that. And there was a lot more time to kind of conceptualize what the live show was going to look like. Right.
I know, like in the book, you write about Karen O and how much Karen O meant to you. And I will just, we are going to be taking questions throughout the thing. And there's one particular question about Karen O, so I'll just throw that out there now, which is from Mary Kate Cellini, which is in your book. You talk about the importance of Karen O in your formative years. What is your hope that people looking to you learn and see represented?
I mean, I hope right now, back then it was like, she was the only one, I mean, there was maybe the only front person that I knew of that was half Korean or let alone Asian at all. And so I think now that there's more and more of a wealth of different, diversity in like all genres. I mean, I think that that's something that we'll see more and more of. And I hope that there's just such a plethora of narrative that it's not even a talking point, you just get to have those different perspectives. And I think that that's really exciting. I hope that people can see that with me and not feel like, oh, she already had this narrative about being Asian American, and instead feel like, oh, it's completely possible for a book like this to not have this niche audience. This, debuted at #2 on the New York Times bestseller list. And maybe 10 years ago, people would have thought it was like a very small audience.
Right.
So I hope that it just inspires people to, tell their story and be creative, even if they don't see themselves represented as often.
Right. That's interesting because it leads into a question I was going to ask you, which I spoke to you in 2016, right? You talked about one point, talked about the hanbok. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, your mother's
hanbok, yeah.
And that she you said that I also saw it recently, a great Bowen Yang quote about like, who is this woman wearing her
Oh yeah.
in an 18-wheeler and shredding? Who is this badass? But you said to me at that point that you said, to be honest, with how few Asian American women there are fronting bands, I feel like I'm wearing one all the time. You know, which is an interesting concept and idea. And so I guess, has that changed? Do you feel like do you with more people represented, or do you still sort of feel that in a certain way?
I think I still feel that in a certain way. And hopefully over time that changes even more. But, you know, especially like, I mean, it's just, you know, there's a part of me that wants to step up to the plate and be that for people. But there's also a part of me that just wants to be an artist and have, you know, questions about my craft. And, you know, especially after the Atlanta shootings happened and there was an uptick of Asian American hate crimes, I became this poster child for answering that question, which is very complicated because, you know, how often does like a mass shooting occur that involves a group of white people and then they get asked about it? It's like, it's not that I don't have feelings about it, but it's like, why is this question being presented to me? Why is it part of this dialogue about my art, you know? So it was kind of, it was a difficult terrain to tread, I think, at that time. And it was frustrating at points, but I understand why that happens. And I think that over time, maybe that will change. Right. But I do still feel that way to a certain extent.
Yeah. When you did your thing with Liz Phair, which must have been really cool, but and you talked about, both of you talked about how you both had recently written memoirs and like how you felt about how you'd represented when you got done, you know, and you talked about sort of having doubts and being almost disappointed in yourself that you hadn't represented your mother, you know, as the way you wished. And so I guess this ties into what I was talking about, the reception the book has had. Like, did you carry those doubts into when, like, until the book got published? And now it seems like it's really resonated with people. You must feel good about that.
I do. I feel really great about it. It's a real relief. I think that, you know, that's part of just maybe what happens to you as an artist as you get older, where like the novelty of completing a larger creative project kind of wears off and you approach it with more scrutiny and there's less of an immediate feeling of gratification and you're constantly questioning how to push it forward. And if you are not, if this is the one that tanks your career. And so, I was really not sure what was going to happen. And for the most part, you know, there's been a really delightful and almost unprecedented response to the book that I'm very grateful for. But of course, there's always like, you know, I think that the book has maybe like a 95% approval rating.
Not quite.
All you can think of are like, what are the 5% thinking, which is absurd because like, you know, I probably hate like 98% of people in this world. And so like, you know, like, I mean, that's pretty good. Like that, you know, 95% of people are interested in what I have to say.
Well, let me ask you that. Was there a sense of like, with both the book and the record, I assume they're both kind of done for a while, and then you had this longer delay and life in limbo because of the pandemic. Like, did you feel like, I don't know, unmoored sort of in that period? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think unmoored is an apt descriptor. But the book was never moved. The book was always supposed to come out when it did. And certainly there were a lot of changes that happened. There was, you know, going to be an in-person tour, and I was so looking forward to it because, you know, on a music tour, you have to carry so much stuff. And I was really looking forward to just hopping over with, you know, a purse and a book and just, you know, loading in and it being a very simple affair. And hopefully I'll get to do that with the paperback. But the album was delayed a year. And at the time, you know, I was very disheartened about that. But in retrospect, you know, and with some time away from it, it's such a petty thing to be upset about. I was at the time I was very fixated on like, oh no, there's going to be a 4-year gap in my discography and that will haunt me forever. And then I quickly got over it, and I'm very glad that we waited a year. And I actually think that the narrative of this album coming out after the book was published makes a lot more sense and feels like a lot more compelling of a narrative to me. That, the last chapter, what feels creatively for me, that feels like a sort of closing of the book on this part of my creative life where I am so fixated on this theme of grief and loss, and this album coming out after it feels like this kind of new period for me. And I think it actually worked out better that it came out after the book.
Right, it makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. Do you okay, let's backtrack a little bit. But you were born in Seoul, right?
Yes.
And there's actually a Philadelphia connection, like going back to before you were born, really, because your father grew up in Bristol, I guess.
Yeah, my father was born in Bristol and grew up in New Hope.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but I don't know exactly how much time he spent in Philadelphia. I'm sure that he spent quite a lot of time in Philadelphia, but I always thought of him growing up as a Philly guy, not knowing much about the East Coast when I was, living in Oregon.
Right, and the words Philadelphia Inquirer actually appear in the book.
Yes, yeah.
That's where he read an ad in Korea where he met your mother, right?
Yes, it's true.
Yeah. So before, and then you grew up in Eugene, Oregon, and sort of, and then came to the East Coast to go to Bryn Mawr College, and when, I guess, I mean, this you tell this story in the book, but how did you think about your identity and your Korean identity sort of in those years before your mother got sick? Were you, was it like, I'm an American, or was it about rebellion, or what were the subtleties of that then?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in America, so I felt like an American, but I didn't feel completely seen that way. And I think that was frustrating for me, particularly in my teenage years, just when any small difference between you and your peers is mortifying, like everything else. And so I think that there were just subtle things that I tucked away, and partially, and especially in music, like I never wanted to be a woman in music. I never wanted to be a Korean person in music. I just wanted to be a musician. And so I remember early on in the Little Big League days when we were playing shows in Philadelphia and there was press, like even dressing a certain way because I wanted to present sort of more masculine and be in the background. Sometimes photographers would want me to be kind of in the foreground in front of the guys. And it was always really important for me to kind of be on equal footing as everyone. And it was very important for me to be taken very seriously for my musicianship. And I think it even impacted my writing style in many ways. I wrote these sort of like kind of like Kmart realist, gritty, like working class, like masculine type stories, and also wrote these kind of like angular, more difficult show-offy chord progressions and guitar parts. And and I think that when my mom passed away, like I just stopped being so obsessed with that. It started to just mean something different to me, and it made me feel closer to her, and it became a thing that I embraced. And it also happened to be a time in the world where I think there was like a real reckoning of many people with their identities, and being proud of where they came from, and connecting with each other and finding community. So I think that just changed a lot around the time that this project started.
At Bryn Mawr, did you, at that point in your life, were you like, I'm gonna do this music thing, like unless it fails, or were you, did you think you were gonna be a writer?
I think I always wanted to be some type of writer. And I was really interested because I thought that the most realistic pathway for me as a writer would be to become a journalist. That was something that I was interested in middle school and high school, and then study. I thought I would have an English major at Bryn Mawr. And then I met my professor, Daniel Torday, who's the director of the creative writing department. And he just changed my life, honestly. It changed the way that I read, changed the way that I write and think about literature. And I thought for a while that I could maybe be a writer, but I always was pursuing music. From my parents, it was like, you have to go to college, and music is always something that you do on the side. And if it takes off in that time, then go for it. But it did not take off for quite a while.
Right. So there are those post-college years. You're in Philly. You're playing in Little Big League. And then you're working various jobs like around town, right?
Yes, I was working at this restaurant, and I had a number of jobs around town. I worked at Yakitori Boy for a period of time. I worked at Raw, which is a sushi restaurant in Center City. I worked at this place called Sochi, which is a Mexican fusion restaurant in Old City that I mentioned in the book, where I met my husband. Those were my main big jobs, I think.
But you also worked for R5, right?
Yes, I also worked for it.
Yeah.
I also worked I worked as an intern at R5 in college. And
that's R5 Productions, indie rock major force in Philadelphia who book Union Transfer, etc. Go on, sorry.
So then when they opened Union Transfer, I actually worked the concession stand and the coat check. Right.
So this is our full circle triumph moment, right?
Yes, this is a very full circle triumph moment.
Yeah. It's too bad it's summer, because you could take a turn at the coat check for old time's sake, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. And then you met Peter, your husband, at 12 Steps Down, right?
I did.
Tell that story a little bit, right?
Yeah, so Little Big League's bass player, Devin Craig, who the song Jimmy Fallon Big is about, his childhood friend was my husband. And so after Little Big League rehearsal one day, he was like, my friend just moved back to the city, and it's his 25th birthday. And we went to the famous karaoke night at 12 Steps Down. And he was singing Billy Joel's Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. And, that was it for me.
You describe him as holding the mic like a champagne flute.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. That was. Does he still do that? Does he do that when he?
He does. Yeah, he does. There's like a real like dainty type of like machismo or something about him. I think like.
Would he like that? Would he be happy to hear that?
Yeah, he knows that about himself. Yeah.
So all right. So when you got word that your mother was sick, and you then go to Oregon to help care for her, and wind up going to back to Korea for a time, and that changes everything, really, right? I mean, like in terms of your perspective, and then ultimately that you like the story you felt like you needed to tell.
Yeah, I mean, it split my life wide open. I mean, it swallowed my very small nuclear family, and I was 25 years old, and I wasn't really going anywhere, and it was a shocking life event that really changed my life. And all of a sudden my mom was gone, my dad moved away, and I was married, and it felt like time to kind of start a more grown-up life plan. But I got this job in New York, at this 9-to-5 job in advertising. But I had made this record in Oregon over the course of the 6 months that I stayed behind there to kind of help my dad pack away the house and sort through the sort of aftermath. And that record was Psychopomp, and ended up being the first album that found success and sort of catapulted us into this position.
And your experience grieving and reconnecting with your mother through cooking starts to happen then, I guess, right? I mean, there's a little bit of it being back there with her, and then doing it on your own while watching these videos. This woman, Mangchi. Yeah. I
mean, I think the book starts with ever since my mom died, I cry in H Mart. And I think in a way, so much of the book is just about tracing why that was, why that began to happen to me. And part of it was feeling close to her and being reminded of her when I made these things or when I ate them or shopped for their ingredients. Some of it, I think, was this kind of sense of psychological undoing I felt of this failure that I experienced as a caretaker, not knowing what dishes to make for her while she was sick. And I think part of it was feeling like this part of my identity was at risk for the first time without this person to connect me to it anymore. And so, yeah, I think that those were things that I learned about why I gravitated towards food in the process of writing this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this part of you that you want to connect with more, and the person that you need is no longer there. Yeah. All right. Would you like to read something from the book now?
Sure. Yeah, that seems like a perfect segue.
I think that's our cue. Great.
All right, I'm going to read the first chapter, which is about the H Mart in Elkins Park. I think I began writing this book in earnest in probably December of 2015 was when this idea began to solidify. And it was the second Christmas apart from my mother. And I was staying in Bucks County with my in-laws and drove out to Elkins Park and was just observing people and thinking about what sort of how food connects us in this way. Ever since my mom died, I cry in H Mart. H Mart is a supermarket chain that specializes in Asian food. The H stands for Hanarim, a Korean phrase that roughly translates to one armful of groceries. H Mart is where parachute kids flock to find the brand of instant noodles that remind them of home. It's where Korean families buy rice cakes to make tteokguk, the beef and rice cake soup that brings in the new year. It's the only place where you can find a giant vat of peeled garlic because it's the only place that truly understands how much garlic you'll need for the kind of food your people eat. H Mart is freedom from the single aisle ethnic section in regular grocery stores. They don't prop Goya beans next to bottles of sriracha here. Instead, you'll likely find me crying by the banchan refrigerators, remembering the taste of my mom's soy sauce eggs and cold radish soup. Or in the freezer section, holding a stack of dumpling skins, thinking of all the hours that Mom and I spent at the kitchen table folding minced pork and chives into the thin dough, sobbing near the dry goods, asking myself, am I even Korean anymore if there's no one left to call and ask which brand of seaweed we used to buy? Growing up in America with a Caucasian father and a Korean mother, I relied on my mom for access to our Korean heritage. While she never actually taught me how to cook, Korean people tend to disavow measurements and supply only cryptic instructions along the lines of add sesame oil until it tastes like mom. She did raise me with a distinctly Korean appetite. This meant reverence for good food and a predisposition to emotional eating. We were particular about everything. Kimchi had to be perfectly sour, samgyeopsal perfectly crisp. Stews had to be piping or hot, or they might as well have been inedible. The concept of prepping meals for the week was a ludicrous affront to our lifestyle. We chased our cravings daily. If we wanted the kimchi stew for 3 weeks straight, we relished it until a new craving emerged. We ate in accordance with the seasons and holidays. In the H Mart food court again, I find myself searching for the first chapter of the story I want to tell about my mother. I'm sitting next to a Korean mother and her son, who have unknowingly taken the table next to old waterworks. The kid dutifully takes their silverware from the counter and places it on paper napkins for both of them. He's eating fried rice and his mom has salongtang, oxbone soup. He must be in his early 20s, but his mother is still instructing him on how to eat, just like my mother used to. Dip the onion in the paste. Don't add too much gochujang or it'll be too salty. Why aren't you eating the mung beans? Some days, the constant nagging would annoy me. Woman, let me eat in peace. But most days, I knew it was the ultimate display of a Korean woman's tenderness, and I cherished that love, a love I'd do anything to have back. The boy's mom places pieces of beef from her spoon onto his. He is quiet and looks tired and doesn't talk to her much. I want to tell him how much I miss my mother, how he should be kind to his mom. Remember that life is fragile and that she could be gone at any moment. Tell her to go to the doctor and make sure there isn't a small tumor growing inside her too. Within 5 years, I lost both my aunt and my mother to cancer. So when I go to H Mart, I'm not just on the hunt for cuttlefish and 3 bunches of scallion for $1. I'm searching for their memories. I'm collecting the evidence that the Korean half of my identity didn't die when they did. H Mart is the bridge that guides me away from the memories that haunt me, of chemo head and skeletal bodies and logging milligrams of hydrocodone. It reminds me of who they were before, beautiful and full of life, wiggling Janggu honey crackers on all 10 of their fingers, showing me how to suck a Korean grape from its skin and spit out the seeds.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for writing it. Thanks for
Thank
reading
you. Thank you.
Yeah. How difficult has it been to keep revisiting it?
I think I mentioned this to you before. I've definitely mentioned it in other interviews. Nick Cave has this really beautiful quote about losing his son and how grief and love are a pact in which they are in two very heavy emotions that are intrinsically connected, and that if you love someone, the pact is that you will grieve when that person is no longer. And so I think in part, and part of who I am as an artist is I was interested in poking that wound. That's what I set out to do. And I think part of poking that wound is this reminder that I really loved someone, and that every time I feel an emotion about her absence, it makes me feel closer to the love and relationship that we had in a way, and that's just how I process things, I think, as I make stuff. And I speak honestly and frankly about it. And, it's been really moving to see how it's entered people's lives and impacted them in small ways. And it's made me feel more connected to the world and human experience in that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How hard was it to write?
It was very hard.
Yeah. In both regards, in regards to like the emotional truth and just like writing a book, like it was tough.
Both aspects of it were quite challenging. I maybe had a little bit more false confidence going into it because I felt like, as someone who had made records and had overseen larger creative projects, that was a leg up that I would have going into this. And having experience with creative writing, I did take a novel writing course in college and got maybe like halfway through a really terrible novel. Uh-huh. But yeah, it was very difficult, but I learned so much from the process, and I enjoy taking stuff like that on in life, and it was very fulfilling when it was over. But it was definitely a challenge to put together, and there was a lot of crying involved.
Right. Yeah. Right. And so I assume the first there's the first Japanese breakfast record, and then there's soft songs from another planet, which you've talked about how that's like was going to be some sort of science fiction concept thing, and turned into sort of a mixture of that and more grieving. And then the book came after those, sort of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with Jubilee, which is the new record, it came out in June. Did the joy come naturally, or was this like, okay, now it's time for joy? Do you know what I mean? Did you need to make that happen a little bit, or to sort of like move on a little bit, or did it just flow?
I think after I had written the book, it felt like I had said everything I needed to say about that experience. Mm-hmm. After 2 albums and a book, I felt like, I have said most of my piece on grief, and it's time to focus my attention on different parts of life that dog me. And so, I think that there are some of our songs even on these like records about grief and loss that are sonically very uplifting. So I think it was about learning how to just turn my attention to a different part of the life experience, and I was ready to do that. I was excited to be kind of freed from that. It felt like almost in a way it was this permission to explore something new and move on.
Right. And everything's a mix, really. I mean,
totally.
Certainly there's like, Everybody Wants to Love You is a pretty joyous sounding song.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there is also some stuff on the new record that is lonely, or can you talk about the two dog songs? Because I'm fascinated by the dog songs.
Yes.
Which are in heaven
and in hell.
Right. And Psychopomp has In Heaven.
Yeah, Psychopomp starts with a song called In Heaven, and I wrote it about my dog was very sad. My childhood dog, this wonderful golden retriever, was the sweetest pooch you could ever meet. She was grieving. My mom was her primary caretaker, and after she died, my dog had no idea what had happened, and so she would sort of pace around her bedroom and lick her paws obsessively. And I brought her to the vet thinking like something was wrong, like she was in pain, thinking that something happened to her paw. Mm-hmm. And the vet was like, was there a major change that happened in your house? Because this is like a behavior that a dog exhibits if they're feeling like nervous or, depressed or something. And that just broke my heart, that my dog had no idea like where my mom had disappeared to, and she would never know. Right. And it just made me so sad. And those are the first lines on the record. Is the dog's confused. She just paces around it all day. She's sniffing at your empty room. And, that song is called In Heaven because it was very much about these people of my parents' generation telling me like, oh, your mother's in a better place. She's in heaven. As someone who's an atheist, it was very frustrating for me. And yet I so wanted to believe that in a way. And then In Hell, which is on Jubilee, is maybe the most devastating song I've ever written, and it is carried over onto this album about joy, and this was written during the Soft Sounds era, honestly, and put on this record because I just thought it was too great of a song to not see light on an album. And it's about putting my dog down and that experience of having to say goodbye to an animal, and it's my childhood animal, and I feel very close to it, but it's also. It's not the same once you've seen a person die. Mm-hmm. And so like having those things happen kind of like within a year of each other was just like a very devastating experience. And that's what that song is about.
Right. And that connects somewhat to the death of your mother.
Yes. Yeah.
And the joyous songs are really joyous. Paprika and Be Sweet are like super happy.
I like to think so. Yeah.
And the Be Sweet video looks like it must have been tremendous fun to make.
It was tremendous fun to make. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but there's a Philadelphia band called Mannequin P.
Pussy, you could say.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Mannequin Pussy is a good friend.
Name of a great band.
They're good friends of mine. They're actually touring with us. Starting tomorrow, and they'll be on 3 out of 5 of the nights in Philadelphia. But Missy from that band is a good friend of mine, and I knew that she would be the perfect agent in this sort of X-Files themed video. So she stars in it. It was a blast to make that video.
Right. And speaking of her and that band, you both of you played a role in Mayor of Easttown, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
What's that? Like that's because that's what we're obsessed with in Philadelphia still.
Right. That's right. I love that show. Missy. Well, the Mayor of Easttown. The Daughters band. Their band's originals are actually Mannequin Pussy songs. Mm-hmm. And so they're performing Mannequin Pussy songs, but HBO needed a consultant to help these kids look like they were playing in a band. And Missy was out on tour, and I happened to be in Philadelphia at the time. And so she very generously sent them my way and was like, oh, my friend Michelle from Japanese Breakfast, like, I think would be a good person to fill that role while I'm away, which is very nice, because I will say that, like, I'm very critical about the things that I do, but I do think I have a good sense of showmanship. And I will say that Missy from Mannequin Pussy, I think also has just unparalleled showmanship as a front person. Mm-hmm. And so it was an extreme honor to be given that, that sort of baton from Missy, who I admire so much. And I just, I taught them how to play her songs, and just kind of look more comfortable doing that together. Yeah.
Look like you belong, kind of.
Yeah, because also, like, the kind of roles that Angourie Rice, the daughter, generally plays is kind of like a more prim type of character. And so I think I just wanted her to just take up more space, and like remember that for me, like, a big thing was, like, she was very, like, and this is probably having to be on camera, you're always like having to face the camera, but I was like, and on a stage, you're always like, you're not always facing the audience. Part of it is that you get to use the stage as this like 3-dimensional space. And so part of me was just like teaching her how to like look tough and like take up space.
Sure. You could be like Miles Davis and turn your back to the audience.
Right. Exactly. Make them want it,
Right. All right. So here, I'm going to ask you a few questions that people have asked.
Great.
One is, Patria Alvalo asks, when you were writing your books, were there other memoirs that inspired you?
Yes, I don't think I read that much memoir before working on this book, and preparing for it, I read a lot of memoir to kind of make up for that. So I really love Ruth Reichel's Tender at the Bone. I love Anthony Bourdain's food writing, particularly A Cook's Tour. Mm-hmm. I got very into MFK Fisher's A Gastronomical Me, Joan Didion's memoirs on grief. And what else did I read? I read Carrie Brownstein's memoir. I read Patti Smith's memoir. I read Viv Albertine's memoir. So I was kind of reading a lot of food writing memoir and grief memoir and musician's memoir to kind of find the intersection of what worked for me and what was working for other people.
That's a good reading list.
Yeah.
I want to read that Viv Albertine book.
Oh, it's so good, actually.
Is it?
She has led, musicians' memoirs are, to be honest, not my favorite, but you can get away with quite a lot, I feel like. But I love Jeff Tweedy's memoir though, and that was another one I read. And but yeah, Viv Albertine. I didn't know that much about the Slits, and that woman has led 10,000 lives, right. And she's a fantastic writer, and I loved that book.
Jeff Tweedy, who covered Kokomo, Indiana, right?
I know.
Yeah, there's a song on Jubilee which he covered on his these couch sessions he does.
Yeah, that was a career highlight. Certainly. Yeah. It was surreal. I mean, I think Wilco is like the pinnacle of a band to aspire to, where they're just like constantly innovating and always like, have had this really long lasting career and discography, and just like are a great band. And I love them. I think that they're everything that's good about music. And that song in particular, Craig Hendricks, who co-produced the record with me and is our live drummer, we were both like, when we were arranging Kokomo, Indiana, we were like, is this too similar to Jesus, etc. with the violence? So it's so funny that he covered that song, because we both were like, I don't know, I think it's fine, but maybe it has some similarities, certainly. But that was wild.
He found the Wilco-ish song. And
of all the songs that and it's so funny too, because I was talking to my friend, and this was really the year where I got to kind of talk to all my heroes, and he was one I was like, I don't know if my friend and I were kind of like, maybe we wouldn't want to talk to him, because I kind of don't I would be intimidated. I wouldn't, I don't know if that conversation would. So this was even better, that I don't even have to like have a conversation where I bother you, but I know that you know that I exist.
Yeah, you like it? Yeah. Doug Keith asks, I hear some elements of one of my favorite bands, the Cardigans, in your new songs. Are you?
I do like the Cardigans. I've heard that before. We've covered Love Fool before. That's the Cardigans, right? And thank you. That's a wonderful compliment.
All right. And Laura Frank says, I teach a course on food and culture at LaSalle University. I always take my class to H Mart to see and shop at the store and eat lunch in the food court. Any suggestions for what you'd include in their visit?
I mean, I think that about covers it. You go to the food court, you have lunch, ideally before you go grocery shopping, so you're like not starving and doing the impulse buys. But I think that's just what you do at H Mart. I think those things are the two essentials.
Mm-hmm. So you directed the videos. Is it 2 videos so far from this record, or are there more?
3.
There's 3. There's Posing in Bondage, and there's Be Sweet, and what's
Savage Good Boy.
Right. And which is a song I've been thinking about today is
as the billionaires go to space. Yes.
Talk about like incredible greed of billionaires. Yeah. But so that makes, basically you're making your own videos and you've done some videos for some other people too, right? Like who? Yeah.
I've done videos for JSOM, Charlie Bliss, and Better Oblivion Community Center, which is Connor Oberst and Phoebe Bridgers' band. Right.
So how strong are your filmmaking ambitions?
Oh, it really fluctuates. Sometimes after a really good shoot, it's, I can't wait to direct my feature. Sometimes it's, I never want to do this again. I think that like it's the highest mountain to climb artistically. Like there's just so many, it's so expensive to be involved, and there's so many moving parts, and it is the most like engaging medium, I think. Easily engageable, like engaging medium. But I don't know if I'm ready for it just yet. I'm going to be working on the Crying in H Mart screenplay, and maybe I can wrap my head around that process a little bit more during that. But I don't know if I have it in me to direct it.
Well, let's talk about that. Like what's the status of that? I assume that deal was in progress for a long time, or did it happen after the book became a big success?
It happened before. It happened I started talking to people in October before it came out. And then I think, we solidified it maybe a few months ago. But yeah, it's a real toe in the water. I'm really excited for the producers that I'm working with, Stacey Schur, who's just a legend, and Jason Kim, who's a great friend of mine and a brilliant writer. He's worked on Barry and Girls, and is also Korean American, and he's, on as a producer. And yeah, I love the team at Orion, and they've been very easygoing so far. I haven't really done much, to be completely honest, but I basically have started highlighting the book and thinking about it, and reading screenplays. I've been reading Almost Famous, which has been fun.
So that's a new challenge, like figure out how to write a screenplay.
And it is really funny because like I do love I just love craft, and I love figuring out rules and making them my own. And there's this kind of like old-timey sort of like 60s advertisement snappiness to the writing in screenplays that I am kind of interested in finding my voice in.
Right. You have to do it with dialogue rather than like extended pro, or let the camera also do it.
Right. Or like even just like describing an action, they do it with a certain type of snappiness. Like I was reading like Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird, and even just like little like, just like old timey sayings of just like the mom is folding hospital corners. And they like love to do stuff like that, that I think is so funny, and I'm interested in trying to find my way around that kind of medium.
Right. I saw an interview you did a few years ago with like a video interview thing with Urban.
Yeah.
And you were asked, what would your feature film debut be?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You said that. Do you remember what you said?
I do remember what I said. I was really interested in writing this feature called Dixie Gun, because there was a little big league song called Dixie Gun that was about this, like, it was a type of like toy rifle you could buy like a long time ago. And it was a kind of like revenge fantasy about like killing catcallers. But now there's like a whole slew of like these types of feminist revenge fantasy narratives that I don't think that's something I'm interested in doing anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I think you said you compared it. You said Badlands meets Spring Breakers.
Right, which sounds awesome.
The girl gang kills catcallers.
Yes, yeah.
Make that movie.
maybe some.
Yeah. Okay, so then another project that you've got going is the Sable, this video game, and that sounds like where you both scored it and wrote a couple songs for it, right? And so that's yet another craft that another line of sort of writing and how to put your music to use. So what was that like, and is that a satisfying experience?
Yeah, it was a completely new, fascinating experience. It was super fun. I got pulled onto this project really early on. It's like an open world desert exploration game where you play as this young girl, Sable, and sort of find what you want to do in the world, what clan you want to join, what mask you want to wear. And, I just thought a lot about all of these kind of coming of age universal narratives. And I think that, the best narratives about coming of age in a lot of ways are Disney movies and like Studio Ghibli movies, Miyazaki movies. And so I was listening to a lot of like Alan Menken tracks and a lot of like Joe Hisayashi, and like what, so much of what I do as a musician is really rooted in very personal detail. And so to write songs where it has nothing to do with your life and has to be much more like this broad universal feeling, like writing language that can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people, was really exciting for me. It really like unlocked a huge door for me, I guess. And also, so much of writing pop songs for this band, Japanese Breakfast, is about creating hooks all the time. Every 10, 15 seconds, you have to have something new that's like keeping you interested. Whereas this is a lot of sprawling ambient things and nothing. There are no hooks because you don't want anything to get too grating or irritating. So figuring out how to do that for the first time was also a really interesting new experience, I think. Right.
It sounds like even more expansive than like scoring a film, I would think.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because you actually have time to fill, sort of.
And there's a lot of like, and nothing. You have no idea what could happen in that space during the time. Whereas when you're scoring a film, you're scoring for particular beats in the movement of the camera or of the character, but you have no idea. Like a player could be in this space, but you don't know what they're doing in that time. So it has to kind of fit a broad mood, I think.
That sounds really cool. All right, here's another question. This is from Bud Struck, who says, "Hi, Dan and Michelle. Huge fan of both of you. Thank you very much." Thank you. Love the book and new album, Michelle, and we are so excited for the upcoming shows. For all your Philly fans, with you talking so much in the book about your life in Philly and working in the industry, what are your 3 favorite Philly restaurants here? And how about your 3 favorite all-time bands? All-time Philly bands.
Okay. Bands is easy, I think. I gotta rep Mannequin Pussy. I love Spirit of the Beehive, which are opening for us so it's Mannequin Pussy opening for us for the first 3 Union Transfer shows, and then Spirit of the Beehive on the second 2. And I love Alex G. I mean, I just am a huge Alex G fan.
who co-produced a song on the record, right?
He did, yeah. He co-produced Savage Cooper.
Yeah. Okay. Food. How about food?
Food. Okay, food is a bit tougher. I love, I think that like the South Philly Vietnamese scene is just where it's at. So Pho 75 is like my top favorite Philadelphia restaurant for pho for sure. Mm-hmm. I love the other one. It's so high pressure. I will say that like I don't even this feels very shocking and not like really on brand, but I have a soft spot for the Fishtown restaurant Soup Kitchen. I ate lunch, Craig and I, while making Jubilee and Soft Sounds, ate at Soup Kitchen a lot. Mm-hmm. What I feel like I'm like going to miss like this horrible thing. I will say like I'm not a big fan of Korean restaurants. I haven't found any great Korean restaurants like in the city. Mm-hmm. But like Elkins Park, Chonggajip is great. I think that's in Elkins Park. Okay. And that's like probably my favorite Korean in the city area. But in the actual city, I don't know. What would you say?
I would say Vernick, which I love.
Oh, okay.
Amazing. But I love Vernick and Vernick fish. I think that guy's a genius. But
oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've been there.
You should go. You should go.
I will.
But it's not about me. It's about you. So the I mean, you're about to do all these shows. You're about to go on tour. Are you nervous about it? You trepidatious at all? You know, COVID, not having played in a while. Like, how are you feeling about it all?
Yeah, I'm trying to like do this thing where I don't do very often, which is like kind of go with the flow. It seems so surreal to me that it's happening, and I don't know if I'll know how I have no idea how I feel right now. Right now, I'm just very like things are compartmentalized. I'm kind of just like, this is my job. I have to focus on doing these things. So I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, I think in some ways it'll be a really special time for music, you know, and I'm really excited to see what this kind of new era brings in. But yeah, certainly I have no idea what's going on like everyone else.
Right. Renee asks, can you tell us who you would love to play you in the movie?
Oh yeah. My running joke is that I would love, what's her face? Emma Stone to Yeah, I think that I'm so excited. I think that, you know, Hollywood has to find a new fantastic half Korean young woman to play me, you know? And I think that that's part of what's exciting about being a new voice is that you have to, there's a whole like domino effect of what that means when you find like a story that hasn't really been told before, because it opens up new opportunities for actors and various roles on this project. So I'm really looking forward to there being a new talent undiscovered talent that we haven't seen before.
But it won't be you. You're not going to play yourself.
Absolutely. I hate acting. And I have no, of my many aspirations, none of them have anything to do with acting.
Okay. So. Okay. When we talked back in April or May, and you talked a little bit about how during the pandemic you felt very unessential, you know, and because sort of believing in art and for art's sake always, and feeling powerless. How do you feel with your art back out in the world in these last couple months, and now about to go out on tour? Do you feel essential again?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, the response to I mean, I do think that art is just like so important. But, you know, I think it's just one of those things like at the time during the pandemic, it was just like, is this the most I can, you know, I don't think people want this right now. You know, they want security and they want safety. And, but yeah, I mean, I certainly feel like art connects us and gives, you know, colors our world. And I think that it is essential in a very different type of way.
Right. And you're out there, you're re-entering the world in like a great big way. It seems like, you know.
I hope so. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're all looking forward to the shows. The shows are going to be great, I think.
We're so looking forward to them. Again, I'm very grateful to Philadelphia and the love that it's shown me.
Yeah. It's like not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5. You know, it's really been something.
Yeah, to go from the concession stand in Kochek to working concessions and Kochek to selling out a historic 5-night run at Philadelphia pretty soon here is pretty special, and
super cool.
It's not lost on me.
Right. Good. Great. Well, thank you very much for doing this. Thanks for being the last thing before you go on tour. You know,
thanks, Dan.
Making time for us.
I'm so glad it was you.
It's great. And so everybody, if you go to Inquirer.com, Philly Playlist Live, you can watch this after it's archived and everything. And it's been great. And once again, thanks to Michelle Zauner, and see you, everybody.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.